Welcome to the Books Applied podcast, presented by WSL Leadership. In this podcast, we talk about an awesome book and how to apply it to your work, sport, or life. I'm your host, Iggy Perillo. Thanks for joining me. Hello, everyone. In this episode, we're talking about the book Think Again by Adam Grant. And unfortunately, or maybe super fortunately, I don't have a special guest with me, so you're just going to get all of my ideas. This book is full of so many amazing little nuggets that I really love, so you're going to get a bunch of gold nuggets. Here we go. Basically, this book is about rethinking things and being open to changing our mind, right? Think again, change your mind a little bit. And Adam Grant says that rethinking is a skill set, but it's also a mindset. When it comes to our own knowledge, we value feeling right over being right. So we want to feel like we're right all the time. We might not actually be right. This is problematic because we actually might not be right. And there are three mindset of non-rethinkers that he talks about. We have the preachers who deliver sermons to protect their sacred ideas. There are prosecutors who find flaws in other people's reasoning to sort of pick them apart. And there's politicians who try to win over others to their point of view. They really try to convince people that they are right, even if they might not be. Instead of those sort of mindsets, those sort of modes of being, Grant says we need to rethink like a scientist. We need to go about this scientifically and thoughtfully. And he sort of, I think, paints this beautiful picture of scientists as really just driven by the facts and by the information. And these other three mindsets of non-rethinkers as kind of bullies out there trying to change minds and crush people's souls a little bit. So scientists is going to look through things maybe a little more cool, a little more thoughtfully, perhaps. And that's that skill set, but also a mindset. And so he says when people are resistant to change, it helps to reinforce what's going to stay the same. You might need to change your mindset. You might need to change things in your world. You might need to be making changes, and some things will stay the same. So it's okay to change. It's okay to grow. It's okay to learn. He says when we lack the knowledge and skills to achieve excellence, we sometimes lack the knowledge and skills to judge excellence. We're not always aware of what we don't know. We're not always aware of what excellence looks like if it's not something we can achieve. When we pass from novice to amateur, we become overconfident. This is beautiful. I think we've seen this where people gain a little bit of skill, they gain a little bit of knowledge. Suddenly, they feel like it's amazing. They feel like they're amazing. They are perhaps overconfident and don't have as much knowledge and skill as they did, as they can have, as they maybe need to have to be that confident. But they're no longer a novice, so they've made progress. And confidence in your ability and humility in your tools is the sweet spot. So confidence is a measure of how much you believe in yourself. And humility is about being grounded and recognizing you're flawed and fallible. So we're confident in our ability to solve things, to figure things out, but we need humility in our tools. We need to be constantly looking for the best way to solve these problems, the best tool, the best strategy in any given situation. He says we are blinded by arrogance when we're utterly convinced of our strengths and strategies. If we think we know the way versus a way, we are not going to do well. We are not going to see where we can grow, where we can learn. We're overly convinced that we have the way. We are not going to be adaptable. We're not going to change when situations demand it. And we're not going to deliver the best we can because we're so fixated on what we already know. So confident humility is the goal. And this is faith in our ability to get things done, but maybe unsure of the solution at the moment. And so you need to detach your present from your past and your opinions from your identity. We love making our opinions our identity, by the way. So yeah, no problem. Just detach your opinions from identity, everyone. Good luck with that. But there are places where we see this happening. Sometimes it's when we have conflict, right? We can have relationship conflict, which is really about a personal and emotional clash. And we can have task conflict, which are clashes about ideas and opinions. And relationship conflict is usually bad for performance. It blocks rethinking, where we get sort of fixated on what we think and what we know, who we are. But some task conflict can be beneficial because we're looking at how things are done. We're looking at ideas and opinions. And so if we don't agree on those, we can we are really more open to exploring and to engaging with other ideas and new opinions. The absence of conflict is not harmony, he says, which I think is a great point. It's apathy. So if there's not some shred of conflict in your world, maybe you have apathetic people. And we don't have to convince people that we're right. We only have to open their mind to the possibility that they might be wrong. And I think this is his way of saying we can avoid those three non-rethinker sort of mindset types, bully types, but just opening people's minds to how they might be wrong. This really made me think of Socrates, who doesn't think of Socrates all the time, who is really about asking questions and opening people's minds to the flaws in their thinking and opening people's minds to how they might not quite have everything nailed down as well as they thought. He talks about expert negotiators who actually talk about their feelings and try to understand the feelings of others. Motivational interviewing is another topic he goes through, which is really about listening and asking if there is what's going on rather than confirming, then later confirming shared goals, shared vision, things like that. I love this line that he whips out, that means are a measure of our character. So how we go about doing something is a measure of our character, which is very funny. The means we go through, the process we use. And a dose of complexity can disrupt confidence cycles and spur rethinking cycles. If we think we got something nailed down, we're overly confident perhaps, and we're not rethinking, we're not open to rethinking, adding more complexity in can make us look for different angles or look for a different perspective, which opens us to rethinking. And asking how to do something, how something happened, how we're going to go about something tends to reduce polarization. Polarization, we focus on the what, the outcome, the thing. We get attached and entrenched in different thinking processes. But asking how, he said, is a great tactic for reducing that polarization. And acknowledging complexity can make us appear more credible. There are nuances. There are things that are different, weird, interesting, unique in different situations. So acknowledging that complexity is going to make you appear more credible. He mentions psychological safety. He's a workplace behaviorist in different ways, and he works in psychology of groups at work. And so he says to move towards psychological safety, managers can disclose a time that they benefited from constructive criticism and share areas where they are working to improve now. Basically, sharing that constructive criticism is helpful and that they are actually, as a human, working and growing, working on things to make themselves better people, better managers, better in their role. So he talks about this beautiful outcome accountability, but also process accountability. And if you have both, you have a learning organization that is accountable to the outcome, is achieving high outcomes, but also attentive to the process and being intentional about creating processes that are engaging in rethinking and being open to new change, being open to new ideas. He has built this beautiful little chart about decision outcomes. So the decision outcome could be positive or negative, but he also talks and that is sort of one axis. The other axis is decision process. And processes he talks about are deep or shallow. Like a shallow process, I just know, this is just how it is, we got it. But a deeper process involves thinking, perhaps rethinking, doing things. And so if you imagine this little chart, if you have a shallow decision process, but a positive outcome, you were probably lucky. Good job. Way to go. If you have a shallow process and a negative outcome, that is failure. There you go. If you have a deep outcome and a positive process, if you have a positive outcome, a deep process, I'm going to get this right, that's where you're in this room of improvement and growth. And if you have a deep process, but a negative outcome, that's an experiment. That's a place to gather information, gather data, and to move forward from that. He says that requiring proof first is the enemy of progress. So I think this really speaks to what he was saying about being a scientist. As a scientist, you need to explore and experiment, but you don't have the proof first, and then that's it, the end of story. So if you require proof first, you're not going to be making progress. And rethinking is more likely when we separate our initial decision making from the later decision evaluating. We can open up our mind to deciding and then later evaluating. And making that separation between the two is an important part. To have this intellectual humility that is going to help us learn and grow faster and also improve faster. Throughout this whole book, he really focuses in on being reflective and separating that reflection, like, hey, we're deciding, this is great, and hey, we're looking at how we decided, what happened, how does this turn out in the end? Not just for the outcome, but also for the process. And so one of the things I really like about this book is that he really walks through a bunch of different areas. He talks, motivational interviewing, negotiations, just sort of different spaces where the process matters and the outcomes matter both. And without intellectual humility and being open to change, you're not going to be open to growth. And without being open to flexibility and the complexity of the situation, you're not going to really fare very well over time. You're going to be limiting both your outcome, but also it's going to be limited because your process is so limited. So this was a fast take on Think Again by Adam Grant. Give the book a read. It is a pretty speedy read, a pretty good time, and I'll see you down the road, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Books Applied podcast. I hope you enjoyed getting to know a new book and learning how to apply its ideas to make your work, sport, or life a little bit more awesome. For more leadership education-related content, including conflict management checklists, invitations to a fun free lunch that happens monthly, upcoming classes, webinars, and mastermind groups, please head over to wslleadership.com. Thanks, and have a great day.